This just in. Today's Daf Yomi is being sponsored by Brian Schiffman and family, the Schus, the learners of Daf Yomi, and the Magid Shiur. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. So now we are on Daf Kuf Nun Tes Amud Aleph 159a. We are going through sort of we had a teaching that came out of Eretz Yisrael, and it was difficult to understand and interpret. And to make matters more complicated, we said not only is it that the statement itself was a little bit forgotten, you couldn't figure out exactly what it was, but the description of the statement was that it was very complicated. So we had to come up with a case that was difficult to understand, right? That's the parameters here. We need a case, and then we have to be able to apply the ruling has to sound like it doesn't make very much sense. So we had a couple. We tried a couple of things which had to do with transference of inheritance. We had a couple of cases where somebody who sold property that he didn't yet own, it was his father's property, and then he died before the father died, so the property gets transferred over to the grandchild instead of going to the person who bought it. We had a couple of those cases. We had a case like that, and we had a case where he sold his firstborn. Then we had a couple of other cases where we had something wrong with the person who is the witness. At first, he was a valid witness, and then he somehow became an invalid witness, right? First one was the thief. Exactly right? He's not an Eid Zomim. Eid Zomim is that he schemes and they're trying to testify about somebody else that they were not a valid witness. But this is a circumstance where the fellow testified about something and then he stole after that. Now he's invalid for testimony. Based on the fact that he's invalid for testimony, he can't even testify about his own signature. Why? Because since we don't believe him anymore, maybe he's lying and he forged the contract and he wrote the wrong date in this contract. And really, his signature is from after when he was already a thief. So we can't trust him to verify his own signature, but yet we're going to trust somebody else to verify his signature. So we said that sounds very strange and unusual, but we decided not necessarily so strange and unusual because this could be a circumstance where there was some already certified contract and we're only certifying a pre-certified agreement. We had the Goslin, we had the circumstance where he was, we had with the Goslin, then we had the case where he inherited, he became an heir, and now we're up to case number 5, potential. And we say like this, Ela ikasha hokasha. Rather, if you're going to try to explain what the difficult case is, it's this one. Excuse me. Haya yodea lo be'edus ad she lo nase chosno. He knew a testimony before he became the guy's son-in-law, right? So before he testified about a certain sale that took place, he signed on the contract. Then v'nase chosno, then the guy married his daughter, and now he's related. And as a result, he is unable to now testify about this deal because he is now related. Okay, so Eino Meid Al Ksav Yado, he can no longer testify about his own signature. About Acher Meidin but other people can testify about a signature. Now, this is a little bit complicated. Hu lo mehimin achrini mehimni. He's not believed about his own signature, and yet other people are believed about his own signature. Now, we're sorry.
That makes sense.
You like that?
Well, I mean,
is this my signature? Yes, we don't trust you. Is this his signature? Yes. Okay, we trust you.
But because the other person didn't do anything to lose trust.
Yes, it does make a little bit of sense. Yes, but nevertheless, the reason why it doesn't make sense is because we generally have a principle that a person is able to be believed about testimony about himself with an equivalence of 100 witnesses. Meaning, if I testify something about myself, generally I have a supreme level of believability.
Right. That's
generally the case. Obviously, you say, here's a reason not to be that way. Now, before you answer, like we answered the previous 2 cases, we already had his signature somehow filed away in a beis din, and we already know that this is his signature. And so therefore, it's just, he's not testifying about this being his own signature. They're just coming to testify that this signature matches other signatures of his, and his signature was already pre-certified in other circumstances. The Amar of Yosef Bar Manyumi, Yosef Bar Manyumi said about this case, Amar of Nachman, and the name of Nachman, This is the case even if there is no other certification of Beis Din, right? He is literally just wants to walk in and say, this is my signature. We're not going to believe him, but we'll believe somebody else off the street to say, this is my signature. Now, my kusha, why is that so complicated, right? As Brian says, not so complicated, because I think that we're thinking like this, Dilma Gzeres Melech. This isn't a matter of believability. If it's a matter of believability, so I can understand why you're worried that I should be believed about my own signature, certainly more than somebody else is believed about my signature. But this is not a matter of believability. This is simply the decree of Hashem. Hashem said it, and that's it. It has nothing to do with believability. Relatives cannot testify. Why? You think it's because the relatives are likely to be dishonest. That's not why. It has nothing to do with why. Just so relatives cannot testify about other relatives. Why? Because it's just Gzeres HaMelchi Dehi Lo Mehimon V'Achrini Mehimni. You cannot trust him, but you can trust others. V'Lav Mishum De Mishaker. It's not because he's dishonest and he's going to lie. Dehi Lo Temachi. Because if you don't say that, Moshe v'Aaron L'chos Nom Mishum De Lo Mehimni. Let's say Moshe and Aaron wanted to testify about their father-in-law. Could they? Moshe and Aaron are certainly believed. All of Judaism is based on the fact that we believe Moshe and Aaron. Nevertheless, they're brothers. They're related to their father-in-law. They can't testify about their father, for or against their father-in-law. Why? Because the Torah says so. El Gzeres Melech. This is just Shelo Ye'idu Lahem. That's the rule. Doesn't matter whether it makes sense as a matter of who's believable or who's not. Moshe and Aaron have supreme levels of believability. Nevertheless, you just can't testify. So Hachanami, this is the same thing here, right? Gzeres Melech. This is the ruling of Hashem. Shelo Yo'id Al Ksav Yado L'chos No. He can't testify about his own signature. It's a matter of, he's believed about his own signature. That's not the case. That's not the issue. He just cannot testify now because this is about a case involving his relative. Somebody else can testify, right? So that's what it is. So therefore, Brian, I think, was sort of not bothered by it for sort of a similar reason, right? Just that's the rule. The rule is he can't testify. They can. Therefore, that testimony is not valid. That testimony is valid.
I didn't know it was a cousin. I didn't know it was his brother.
Okay. Ella li'olam kidamrina mikar. So, okay, we went through five. We gave five possible explanations. None of them really worked out. Can't figure out why this is so complicated. So therefore, we're going to go back to the first one at the beginning. Let's go back to the beginning one. What was the problem? What was the first one? The first one was this, right? Ruvain has a father named Yaakov. He has a son named Chanoch. Okay? Ruvain has a father named Yaakov, a son named Chanoch. And Ruvain decides he's going to be clever. He needs some money, but he doesn't have any land. I will sell to Shimon some land that my father owns. And why will Shimon buy it? Because eventually one day Yaakov's going to die and Ruvain will inherit it. When Ruvain inherits that land, it'll become yours. You'll give me the money now, transact the sale now, and that money, and then when I inherit it, I will then transfer it over to you. Problem is that the day never comes that Ruvain owns it, because Ruvain died before Yaakov did. So then, when Yaakov dies after that, comes Chanoch, and he says, land's mine. Well, why should that be? Shimon should say, how did the land get to you, Chanoch? It went from Yaakov to the dead son Ruvain, and then from the dead son Ruvain to you. But as soon as it went from Yaakov to the dead son Ruvain, that's the point where I, the buyer, can jump in there and grab it, because I bought it from Ruvain.
But a dead person cannot inherit it.
This is going to be part of our question for the next half a page. Whether a dead person is basically a placeholder inheritor. Is it basically does the land transfer directly from the grandfather to the grandson, or is it transferring from the grandfather to the son to the grandson? Even though the son is dead, but basically it has to go from the grandfather to Ruvain the son. He's dead, therefore continues on down the line to the next in line.
Before we had that chaos. That's why we were talking about younger, like if they were super intelligent that they could inherit. That person has no daya.
Yeah, we were talking about super intelligent being able to buy
right.
and sell. Remember that Yerusha doesn't require any intelligence. A minor, a child, a baby who's 1 year old can inherit, right? So you don't need any. That's a good point, right? You don't need any knowledge or awareness in order to inherit. So maybe that's what's happening. You can even do it when you're dead. Okay, so now the problem is that we pointed out that we had a pasuk back then. We said, you know how we know really the method of transference is that Chanoch actually replaces his father Reuven and inherits it directly from Yaakov. That's how the transference happens. It doesn't go from Yaakov to Reuven to Chanoch. It goes directly from Yaakov to Chanoch. How do we know that? Because the pasuk said, "Tachas avosecha yibanecha," that your children will be in the place of the father. Therefore, it actually happens, the way this transference happens is that Chanoch stands in place of Reuven and grabs it directly from the grandfather. Therefore, Shimon, the buyer, has no opportunity to purchase it. So now, however, what was your point? How are you going to, you said the pasuk seems to imply that the money gets transferred directly to the grandson. I will argue that pasuk is not telling me a halacha. That pasuk is bebracha ksiv. That's a pasuk in Tehillim. It's just giving you a blessing. There's a blessing that you get. One day, your children are going to stand in your place and be able to step up and take over. That's a blessing. That is not a halacha. We were interpreting as the children is going to stand up and he's going to be able to inherit directly. No. He says, it's just a bracha. Umimatzis amar bebracha ksiv aval le'inyan dina lo. Wait a second. Are you telling me that that's not the halacha? It's only a bracha? And that the grandson doesn't literally step up and inherit directly from the grandfather? Vatanya, we have a brisa. It goes like this. Nafal habayis alav v'al aviv. Let's say a house similar to our Mishnah, right? This is our Mishnah. We changed it from Vatanya to Vatnan. This we learned in our Mishnah. This is our Mishnah from earlier in the parak. Nafal habayis alav v'al aviv. If the house falls on him and on his father, alav v'al morishav, on him and on those other people, some other person who would cause him that he would inherit from, right? Father is somebody he would inherit from, or others that he would inherit from. Vaisa alav ksubas isha, and he has some debt. He owes a ksuba to a wife. Ubal chov, or he has another debt that he owes money to. So now, Yorshei ha'av omrim, the ones who would inherit the father, they say habein meis rishon, they say the son died first. Right?
Going back.
And therefore, right? Remember this one?
Right, yeah.
Okay, good. So ve'achar kach meis ha'av, and then afterwards the father died. So therefore, we don't have to worry about the debt. The money gets basically that we're going to inherit the property directly from the father. Ubal chov omer, but Bal chov, the creditor, he says no. Ha'av meis rishon, the father died first. Therefore, all the property transferred to the son. Right? And then the son died, and now I can step in as the creditor and collect the money.
That's a different case. Because in the other case, the person died before the father.
You're right. It's a different case. Yes, this is a different case. But what are we trying to prove? We didn't get to the proof yet. But the proof that what we're trying to prove is that a grandson steps up and inherits directly from the grandfather. Right? Now, my love, Yorshea of B'nai. Now, in this case, who are the heirs? Who are these people? Like we said, the heir and the person who transfers over. So the ones who are inheriting from the father, right? Those are B'nai. Those are his children, right? That's the children. And Morishav, the ones who he would inherit from, other than his father, would be Achi, his brothers, right? He would be able to inherit from his brothers. So now, here's what's happening. If the son is not able to say, I'm jumping up and I am going to be collecting instead of in the place of my father, why? Because the pasuk says that your children are going to be in the place of the fathers, just like we said. And bebracha ksiv, and you're interpreting that to mean only a bracha, not the halacha, not a halachic matter, but only the bracha. So now, ki meis habein v'achar kach meis ha'av my havi. So what would happen then if the son dies first, okay, and then the father dies? Now, according to the Mishnah, if the son dies first and then the father, then the creditor is out of the picture. Not our problem. right? The creditor is out of the picture, and the father's heirs are going to be able to get the property. Now, havinema lehu balchov yerushas avuhon kashakilna. So then what will happen is the grandchildren are stepping up. Now you say the grandchildren, what we were saying before is the grandchildren are inheriting directly from the grandfather. Okay, then you're cutting the balchov out. He's the middleman. However, if now we're saying it's not like that, the grandson is actually stepping up in the place of his father, and that's how he's inheriting from the grandfather. So then what difference does it make who dies first? Because if the son dies, and then the property gets inherited up to the grandfather, and then the grandfather dies, so now the grandchildren are coming and saying, hey, we want to inherit it from our grandfather. Well, congratulations. Go ahead and do it. How does it work? You step up in the place of your father and take it from your grandfather. Well, as soon as he steps up in place of his father, here comes the Baal Chov again, and he says, remember, you're in your place of your father now. Now you owe me the money. So what? Baal Chov is a creditor, right? He's the creditor. So therefore, it makes no difference whether the father dies first or the son dies first. Either way, the money can only get down to the children by going through the father. So we're stuck. So therefore, it's clear from this, the only way to interpret our Mishnah is that the grandchildren are able to inherit the grandfather directly, not through the father. That's why we're skipping the Baal Chov. That's why we're skipping the creditor, because he's able to inherit it directly. So therefore, that's potentially the answer. So he says, okay, no, it doesn't really prove that, because your Shea of, you know who the inheritors of the father are who are claiming here? If it was the grandchildren, you're right, then that would prove the point. But the inheritors of the father are not the grandchildren. The inheritors of the exactly. It's the father's brothers, right? And Morishav, and who are the ones who he's going to inherit from? Those are the Ache Dahavuha. They're his father's brothers. What's happening is like this. The grandson, right? There is no grandson, right? So what's happening is the father's brothers are coming along and saying, we want the money, not that it goes down to because there's only a father and a son, no grandchildren. So if the father died first and it goes down to the son, then the creditor, and then the son dies, then the creditor say, we want it. Okay, then they have the opportunity to take it. But if it goes up to the father, and then he died, and so because the son died first, it goes up to the father, it's not transferring back down. It's going to go sideways over to the brothers, and therefore the creditors have nothing to do with it. So this Mishnah proves nothing. It's not, we tried, not so. Okay, now, Rav Sheshis wants to know sort of a different question. He says, it's related. Bain mahu sheyirishas imo bekever lahanchil la'achin minhav. Can a son inherit his mother's possession after he dies in order to transfer that inheritance over to his paternal brothers? Okay, let's get the situation here. A mother, there's a woman, she has a single son. That son is going to inherit her. Okay, that's the halacha. Now, that son, mother has, his father had children from another wife. Okay, those other children are not heirs of this kid's mother because they don't have the same mother, but they have the same father. Now, paternal brothers inherit from each other, right? That they can do. So now, the question is, the mother dies. If the son was still alive, that son would get the property. If the son then died, the property would go from the son to his paternal brothers. Okay? What happens if that person in the middle is missing? The son in the middle is not there. Does the money transfer from the mother to the child that's already dead? But he's dead, so now it goes to his heirs. Or do we say that there's no Yerusha here, and it goes to somebody else who can inherit the mother from from somebody else in the mother's family? That's our question. So, well, that's what we're going to do, right? The mother to the stepson, but you can only get to the stepson through the son. So that's the question. Can the son inherit in the grave so that it transfers over to the stepson? Okay? That's what we're trying to do. So, Amar Lu Rav Sheshis. Rav Sheshis says, Tani Suha. We've taught this already. Ha'av shenishba umeis beno b'medina, right? You had a father. He was captured. Okay? He's captured. They're not in the same area, so we don't know who's going to die first. That's why one is getting taken to another place. The father is in a different place, and his son dies in the home country. uben shenishba, or you have a son that's captured, umeis aviv b'medina, and his father dies in the home country. Well, they're not going to know. They eventually find out. So now the question is, you don't know which happened when, who's first, who's second. So Yorshei Av Yorshei Bain. Now the heirs of the father and the heirs of the son. So then Yachloku, they're going to split the inheritance. So now, Hechidami, what's the circumstance? If you're going to just read this as a simple thing, you've got two groups of inheritors. One wants to inherit it from the father, one wants to inherit it from the son, and therefore they both have an equal claim, and therefore they're going to split it. So Hainihu Yorshei Ha'av, Hainihu Yorshei Ha'bein. They're not two groups. It's the same people. A father and a son have the same heirs. Right? It's just either if it's the kid, if it's the son's children, then they inherit both the father and the son. If it's the father's brothers, and in any event, they have the same heirs. So therefore, who's splitting this? There's something to split here. Elav hachikomer. This is what it means to say. Av shenishba umeis ben bito b'medina. What we have is the circumstance is really like this. The father got captured, and it was his daughter's son who dies in this country. Or ben bito shenishba, or we're going to remove, or it's bito shenishba, or it's his daughter who's captured. Right? We remove that, this aleph. Change the girsa. The tevas, bito is new. The word bito is, so it's his ben who is captured, umeis avi imo. The son is captured, and his mother's father is taken captive. Okay, so now we're dealing with a grandfather and a grandson through a mother in between. Okay, that's the case, right? So it's a person and his mother's father, or it's a person and his daughter's son, right? So it's basically a grandchild from his daughter, or it's my mother's father, same relative, just either you're starting from the grandson's perspective up or from the grandfather's perspective looking down. Okay? You don't know which one of them died first. Yorshei Ha'av, the Yorshei Ha'bein. So now you've got the inheritors of the father and the inheritors of the son. So Yachloku. They're going to split it. Okay, now, Vim Isa. Now, if this is true, Nihinami de ben meis beresha. Let's say the son were to die first. Lirsei la'avuha de'imei, b'kivrei. So then he should inherit his mother's father in the grave. V'lirsinhu la'achuha min avuha, and then he's going to transfer it over to his brothers from his father. Right? In other words, he's now inheriting. Who cares that he died first? If what you're saying is that the son can inherit his mother, even though he's already dead, and then transfer it over to his brothers, so then why are they splitting in this case? The inheritors just transfer it over to his heirs because he can still inherit it either way. Right. Whether he's alive, he inherits it, or if he died, he still inherits it and then transfers it over. Ela lav shma mina. So you see clearly from the fact that we're going to split this as Ein ben Yorchis Imo Bekever Lamchil La'achin Me'av. That the son does not inherit his mother after he died in order to transfer it over to his brothers from the father. Amar le Rav Acha bar Manyume le Abaye. So Rav Acha bar Manyume says to Abaye, Of an nami tanina. You know, that's the halacha, and we also learned it in a Mishnah. We also learned it in a Mishnah to support that. One of our other Mishnahs that we learned. Nafal Abayis alav val imo. The case was the house fell on him and on his mother. Elu ve'elu modim shiyach loku. Both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel are going to agree that they're going to split it. And here we are again. Why are we splitting? Because two groups of heirs, each one are making a claim to the mother's property. Right? Now, V'im Esau, if it's true that the son should inherit it regardless, even after he died, I understand, right? If the son is going to die first, so then he's going to inherit his mother in the grave. Then he'll cause the inheritance to go over to his brothers from the father. We see clearly from here. Since it's two different groups of inheritors, so therefore we see that is not the case. The son is not inheriting it from his mother after he dies. Rather, if he died first, it's going to be the mother's heirs who get it. And therefore, Shmami, no, we see clearly that from the Mishnah. Now, V'taimamai, what is the reason for that? Why is it that the son doesn't get to inherit it? So, Amar Abaye says, Nemro Siba Beben, the Nemro Siba Bebal. There's a concept called the Gzera Shava in the Torah. Gzera Shava is when you have the same word written in two different places, and we are going to equate those words and say that whatever the halacha is in this case, where that word is written, is also the same halacha over here. Now, the thing with the Gzera Shava is that they're not logical. You can't look through the Chumash and find wherever you see the same word and draw one out of conclusion for yourself. These were traditions, and you can only learn a Gzera Shava where there was already an existing tradition. But they had this tradition about the word Siba, transference, when it comes to the son and also when it comes to a husband. Masi baha murabal. How does transference of possessions work by a husband? Ein habal yorish es ishto bekever. A husband does not inherit his wife's possessions after he dies. Meaning, the husband is able, when he's alive, his wife dies, he inherits all of her possessions. However, if the husband died first and then the wife dies, it doesn't go to the husband's relatives, it goes to her son. Right? So therefore, af siba hamur ben, that is the same halacha, therefore, by the son himself. Eina ben yorish es imo, the son does not inherit his mother bekever after he dies, to transfer to his other relatives, his paternal relatives, his brothers. Right? He only inherits his mother if he's alive. If the mother? Yeah, so who died? Depends who died first. If the husband dies first, then the wife has her own possessions, right? His possessions are going to go to his heirs, but we had learned yesterday there were possessions that were hers from the estate, right? The ksuba and the nichse melug, which were hers. Those properties are going to go to her heirs, right? They were going to go to her relatives, yeah. Mm-hmm. So some of the property is going to go to his, some to hers, depending on who dies first. Okay, Hahuda Omar le lechavre. Let's say a person made a deal with his friend, and he said, he says, everything in my property that I bought from this guy, Bar Sisin, I'm selling to you. So that's the deal he made, right? And they transfer the money, and that's wonderful. Now he's going through the property, and he finds out, they found another property, and it was called the land of the children of Sisin, the land of the son of Sisin. Amarle ha lav debe bar Sisin. So he says, okay, well, I want that piece of land because I bought all of Bar Sisin's property. He says, that wasn't Bar Sisin's property. I didn't buy that from Bar Sisin. It's just called that. That was the name of the property. It was called Bar Sisin's property, but it wasn't Bar Sisin's real property. So now, it's the ikruye hu demikra debe Bar Sisin. It's only called that. So therefore, it shouldn't be included in the sale. The sale was only the things that I bought from Bar Sisin. So also Lekame de Rav Nachman. So they brought the case before Rav Nachman. Okma biyada de lokeach. He gave the property to the purchaser. He said, look, you bought everything that was Bar Sisin. That's included. Amrali Rava Rav Nachman. Rava said to Rav Nachman, Dina hachi? Is that really the rule? Hamotzi mechavero lavaraya. Don't we have the rule that the burden of proof is upon the person who wants to take the possession from the other person? So the purchaser should be the one who proves. The burden of proof should be on him. So Virami de Rava ad Rava, Ude Rav Nachman ad Rav Nachman. Then we're going to make a contrast of Rava against Rava in another circumstance, and Rav Nachman against Rav Nachman. Here's the circumstance. Dahu de Amar lechavre. There was once a story. A person said to his friend, "My boys b'hai besa," says, "What are you doing living in this house? It's my house." So Amar le minoch zevinta. He said, "What are you talking about? I bought it from you." Okay. And now I stayed here for a period of 3 years. Now, earlier on in these Masechtas, we established a concept called a chazaka. Chazaka is that this is considered to be the status quo. When a person lives in a property and uses a property for 3 years and nobody protests, then we presume that he is the owner of that property. Now, it could be he stole it, but then where was the original owner to come up and say, it was really mine? After 3 years, before 3 years, you have to, if somebody comes up, you have to prove it. After 3 years, the burden of proof is no longer on you. And therefore, you no longer have to keep your deed of sale after 3 years in order to prove that you're the one who really owns it. Because since you were there, that's considered to be status quo. You're the owner. The other person has to prove it. So now, Amar Le, listen to what the guy tells him. He says, Anna b'shchuni gavai havai. I was in the inner room the entire time. 3 years, right? I was living. You didn't ever check what was going on in the closet? I've been living in there the whole time. So that's why I never said anything to you, right? I guess maybe that he knew he was there, but whatever it was,
Were the walls soundproof?
Something like that, right?
Drywall.
I was living there the whole time. So therefore, of course, I didn't protest because I thought it was clear based on the fact you were basically my tenant. So I didn't need to complain. So also the Kamid Rav Nachman, so they came before Rav Nachman on this case. Amar Le, Zirl Boror Achaltich. You have to be able to prove that you have consumed it without the guy being living in there. You have to prove that you actually had the rights. So Amalei Rav Nachman. Rav said to Rav Nachman, Dina Hachi, is that really the rule? Hamotzi mechavero avaraya. So why should that be? If this guy's been living there for 3 years, shouldn't the other guy be the one who's responsible to prove it? So Kasha de Rav ad Rava, Kasha de Rav Nachman ad Rav Nachman. So now we have a contradiction on Rava against Rava and Rav Nachman on Rav Nachman. Why? Because when we were dealing with the inner rooms and the outer rooms, Rava thought that the person who purchased, right, he's the one who has to prove it. Again, who has to be the proof? Now there Rava says the purchaser has to prove it, right? But as far as the rules of Bar Sisin, he said that the seller was the one who had to prove it, right? And Rav Nachman says the other way around. When it comes to the inner rooms and the outer rooms, he said that the seller was the one who got to keep it. And when it comes to the case of Bar Sisin, he said the purchaser was the one who had to prove it. So why is it that they keep flipping their opinions? So de Rava lo kasha. So there's not a contradiction between Rava and Rava. So hacha here in this case, mocher koi ben nichsei. He says what's happened is that the seller, right, he was the one that's holding on to the property. When it came to the Bar Sisin, the seller is still holding. He said, I'm selling you the Bar Sisin, but here was the property, and he never transferred that property over. So therefore, he's still possessing that one. Hasam, but in the other circumstance, lokeach kai benichsei. The purchaser was living in the house the whole time. Right. So he was really holding on to it. So now, you want to say you were living in the other room? You need to prove that, right? So that's why he held the burden of proof. Whoever was the person living in there was the one that we were relying on. The Rav Nachman lo kasha, and Rav Nachman is not a contradiction. Hacha, when it comes to in this circumstance by the Bar Sisin, he says, Kevon de Amarle de Be Bar Sisin, Umikra de Be Bar Sisin, then a lady day Ramya legiluye de lav de Be Bar Sisin he. Look, you have to listen to what the guy said. The sale was all Bar Sisin property. Now, what did the guy claim back? This isn't Bar Sisin property? He says, no, it is Bar Sisin property, but I meant to not include this. So that's why he is sort of himself admitting in it. Hacha lo yehe ela denakit shtara. Right? It's like a pesha usher kind of a thing, right? But here, by the inner rooms and the outer rooms, so then what happens is like this. He says, lo yehe ela denakit shtara. So then, let's say, the seller, the purchaser really had a contract, right? In this circumstance, would we have been able to? We would have told him to go prove your contract, because at the end of the day, I'm living there, right? So therefore, that's my claim. So in other words, I'm admitting to the claim. You're saying that you were there. I'm saying you're right, you were there, but I am. It's the same thing as yes, but you're right. You're in the house, but it's mine. Okay, well, what would have happened if there was a contract? We would have just told the guy, go certify the contract. The fact that he's been living there is irrelevant. The contract would have been sufficient. So again, since basically the Rav Nachman is taking a look at this, and he's saying, look at what the claims are. The claims, you have to follow the claim. When the case of Bar Sisin, the claim is this is Bar Sisin land, and the yes says yes, it's Bar Sisin land, but here's why this is not included. Well, yes, we are going to believe you. We don't believe you about the second part. And as far as the house, This, I was living in the house. Yes, you were, but I was living in the room. No, now, again, same sort of a thing. You can't but. You can't add that. So that's why there's consistency across. Hadranach mishames, hadranach mishames, hadranalach mishames. That's the end of the 9th parak. We finished our first parak together. Okay, new topic. Clear the brain. Okay, here we go.
Take a breather.
Get pashut. The word get means a contract. Okay, we use the. It means a divorce, but it's really a contract, right? The word get refers to a contract. So when we see the word get, generally speaking, we always refer to that's a divorce document. But the word get is a contract regardless of whether we're talking about a divorce contract or a sales contract. Okay? So when we talk about a get in this parak, we're talking about all sorts, right? We're talking about divorce contracts, we're talking about land sales, and that's why, even though there was a Masechta called Maseches Gittin, which talked all about divorce contracts, we're going to talk about contracts here. We never talked about how divorce contracts are written over there, because now is our chance to talk about all contracts, how contracts are written.
Refers to all contracts.
That's correct.
So this is like introduction. This is like introduction to the.
This is kind of, now we're going to talk about, shtar is the word that we use commonly to refer to a financial document, and a get is referred to as a divorce document. When the Mishnah uses the word here, get, it's not necessarily specifically a divorce contract. Okay? You're right. Well, I'm just pointing out that the word can be used interchangeably, right? So this is going to be, right, a get is going to refer to a contract. Okay? So now, get pashut. I have a plain get. We're going to learn that there's two types of contracts, or divorce contracts even, right? We have a get pashut, a plain contract. Here's my plain contract. On the top of my plain contract, I've got all of my words. It tells me everything that happened. And then, in that circumstance, Edav mitocho, then I sign the witnesses in this contract, right? Right underneath, I write the witnesses' names. Right underneath, right into the contract. Then I've got something called a mikushar, a tied up, a bundled, a tied up contract. Okay? We're going to see that there's what is a tied up contract and why we have such a thing in a moment. But we've got a different type of contract. That's what it's going to look like. We're going to be playing with that in a moment. Okay? Now, this tied up contract is me'achorov. The signatures are going to be on the back. Okay? Pashut. Did I bring my pen? I did not bring my pen. Okay. Let's grab a pen. Yeah. Okay. Let's make sure that we see how this works. Okay. Perfect. Okay. So again, this is a regular star. My witnesses sign on the bottom. A get pashut, a get mekushar is going to work like this. They write a line, and then they skip a line. Okay? And then what I do is I take the document where I wrote on it, and I fold the written line over onto the space, onto the free space. Okay? Just like so. I get a witness, and I sign on the fold. Okay? Okay? Signed right there. Okay? Then, okay, I write another line. Okay?
And another signature required on the other fold.
And then I'm going to sign it, right? I'm going to fold it over again, and I'm going to sew it up. That's why it's called the kusher. I'm going to sew it up, okay? And I sign it again. We're going to see. I don't want to give it away. You want me to tell you? I'll give the punchline of the Gemara away. Okay? Yes. I don't want to give it away.
I hate spoilers.
We're going to do that at least 3 times. Okay? There's going to be 3 witnesses on this contract. Okay? Okay? Where is my writing? The writing is on the inside. Where's my witness? On the back. Right? My witnesses' signatures are going to be on the back of the document. Right? Everything, you can't. It's going to be. We're going to say that all the contracts are going to be impossible to forge anyway, right? We're not going to let the forgeries now. But I've got this now all folded up, all right, and it's all sewn up. Okay. They would sew it. Okay, so that's what's happening now.
You think of it as like each
Mik-
thing its own.
And by the way, it's only the first 3 lines. Then the rest of the lines, the rest of the writing continues on over here. This is the first 3 lines are written here, and then the rest of the line. By the way, for example, a get contains 12 lines. A woman's by custom, right? How do you remember that? Because the gematria of the word get is 12. That's not why, but it just happens to be. The gematria is 12, and so therefore there's 12 lines to a get. The first 3 are written in this sort of a way, and then you got the rest of them written down there, okay? That's how the contract is going to be. So, first thing we said was get Pashut, the witnesses are on the inside, the Mekushar, the witnesses are on the back. Pashut shekosvu edav me'achorov, Mekushar shekosvu edav mitocho, shneim psulin. If you flip that around, if you sign a regular contract with witnesses on the back, puzzle. If you sign sign a Mekushar contract with witness on the front, puzzle. Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel Omer, Mekushar shekosvu edav mitocho, kosher. Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel says, you know, if you write witnesses on the bottom of this contract, of this Mekushar, it's kosher. Why is that? He says because you can always untie the thing, and then guess what? It comes back to becoming a regular contract again. So therefore, since it can be a regular contract when you unfold it, so if you do just write the witnesses down here, that would also be kosher. Okay? That's what Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel says. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, Hakol keminhag haMedina. As far as that is concerned, everything is going to go according to the custom of the country that you're in. Get pashut, right? The get pashut, a plain get. Edav bishnayim. You need 2 witnesses. Well, you need 2 witnesses on the bottom of the contract. Umekushar, when it comes to a tied up, bishlosh, you need 3 witnesses. As we said, at least 3 folds, 3 witnesses.
Like a basin.
It's like a basin, but they're witnesses, so it's not like a
3
basin.
set of witnesses.
No, not 3 sets. 3
So a
witnesses.
single witness could be
Single
on
witness on each fold.
Really, could I use an Eid Naman?
There's no Eid Echad, it's 3 witnesses, because these 3 witnesses are testifying about this contract. 1 witness, 2 witnesses, 3 witnesses, right?
I get it. It's just, right.
Okay, that's it, 3. Now,
No, it's just my brain's very.
Pasha shekosov bo Eid Echad. If you only put 1 witness on your regular contract, umekushar shekosov bo shnei edim, or you only put 2 witnesses onto a mekushar, shnei psulim, that's going to invalidate the contract, right? If your brain didn't explode and we finished a whole Mishnah, you see that this parak is much easier. The last couple of prakim are known. I didn't want to say it when we were starting because we decided to pick a very difficult parak to get started in. But okay,
Now you tell us?
yes. So you're going to see Gemara can be a lot more fun. Anyway, it says the Gemara, Minani Mili. First, we want to know where are these from. That in order, whenever the Gemara wants to know Minani Mili, it means we're going to try to find a pasuk. We're trying to find a pasuk in the Torah that tells us that there's such a concept of 2 different types of shtaros. Amar Rabbi Chanina said, to Amar Kra, the pasuk says, this pasuk is in Yirmiyahu. Sados bekesef yiknu, you should purchase fields with money, uksov b'sefer, and write it in a sefer, a book, or a contract, v'chasom, and seal it, v'ha'ed edim, and then you will testify and have witnesses. Now, what is this pasuk? Break the pasuk apart. Sados bekesef yiknu, you're going to purchase fields with money, uksov b'sefer, and you're going to write it into a contract. Zeh pashut. That's a regular plain contract that we've been discussing. V'chasum, and then you're going to seal it. Zeh mekushar, a sealed document. That's referring to the shtar mekushar. V'ha'ed, and then you are going to have witness. That's shnayim. Whenever you have the word aid, the Gemara in Maseches Makos tells us the word aid means 2. So the word aid is really a plural of 2 witnesses. It means a testimony, a single testimony of 2 witnesses. V'ha'ed refers to 2 witnesses. Aidim is the additional extra witness, which is shlosha, 3 witnesses. Ha'ketzad, so how do you have 2 witnesses and 3 witnesses? What is it? Shnayim lepashit, you need 2 witnesses for the plain shtar, and shlosha lemekushar, and 3 for the mekushar. Okay?
It says Eid Echad, and then we know it's not.
Mekushar means to bound, right?
That's correct. To bind a tied up contract. Ve'epoch. 1 second. If the pasuk only says you need 2 witnesses and 3 witnesses, and there are two types of contract, how do you know that it's not that you need 2 for the mekushar and you need 3 for the regular? So the answer is, Ana mitoch shenisraba biksharav nisraba be'edav. The answer is because it's kind of logical. If you're going to add extra folds, then that's the one that you should be adding the extra witnesses to. And the one that is just plain, that's the one you're just going to write the plain witnesses on. That's the first opinion. Rafram says, Mehocha, it's from this following pasuk. This pasuk is also in Yirmiyah. Ve'ekach sefer hamakna. You're going to take the document that is causing the transaction, as hachosum, the one that's sealed, hamitzvah ve'hachukim, the mitzvos and the laws, the statutes, ves hagaloi, and that which is revealed, ve'kach as sefer hamakna. So now we're going to go back to the pasuk. I'm going to take the contract that causes the transference, ze poshut. That's a regular contract. That's referring to the regular contract. As hachosum, that which is sealed, ze mekushar, that is the tied up one. As hagaloi, and the revealed means that ze poshut. Shebe mekushar, that is the bottom part of the mekushar, which is open and revealed, right? That tells me that such a contract exists, that part of the contract exists. Ha-mitzvah ve'hachukim, that tells us that there's 2 things, elu dvarim shebein poshut mekushar. There are 2 distinctions between these 2 types of contracts. Ha-ketzad, what are the 2 distinctions? As we said, ze'edav shnayim ve'ze'edav shlosha. One has 2 witnesses and one has 3. Ze'edav mitocho ve'ze'edav me'acharov. One has witnesses on the front, one has witnesses on the back. Ve'epoch, ana. So ve'epoch, why don't we flip that around and make it 3 witnesses and 2 witnesses? Ana mitoch nisrab b'ksharav nisrab be'edav. Again, same idea. The one that has more folds should be the one that has more witnesses. It makes more sense. Rami bar Yechezkel Rami Hacha. Rami bar Yechezkel says is from the following pasuk in Dvarim. Al pi shnayim edim, o al pi shlosha edim yakum davar. Based on the fact that there's testimony of 2 witnesses, or the testimony of 3 witnesses, a testimony shall be accepted. Im tiskai medusum b'shnayim. Question is, if you're going to establish a testimony by 2 witnesses, lama prat lecha b'shlosha, then why does the pasuk have to say 3 witnesses? Obviously, if 2 witnesses are sufficient for testimony, 3 witnesses will be even better. So the answer is lomar lach, to say to you, shnayim lepashut, that there are 2 witnesses for a regular contract, and shlosha lemekushar, but 3 witnesses are required when it comes to the tied up contract. Ve'epoch, how do you know not to flip it the other way? 3 for the pashut and 2 for the mekushar. On the mitoch shenisraba b'ksharav, the answer is because, again, there's more ties and folds. Nisraba be'edav, we're going to have more witnesses. Now, problem is, that's not what these psukim are for. The hani lahachi hu da'asu, is that what these psukim are coming to tell me? Really, kol chad v'chad l'mil sehu da'asa. Each one of these psukim is really coming to teach me a different lesson. And when you have a pasuk coming to teach you a different lesson, then it's not used for the halacha that you're saying it's being used for. Let's start with the beginning. When Lechedatanya, we learned in a brisa. Sados bekesef yiknu v'kosef v'sefer v'chosum. That pasuk that you're going to purchase the fields with money, the first pasuk, and you are going to write it in a contract and you're going to seal it. Eitza tova kamash malon. That wasn't in Yirmiyahu a halacha. That was just good advice. He was telling everybody that you should, when you write your contract deals, sign deeds on your contracts and then seal it up in some pottery so that it doesn't get lost, right? And you would have now you have things like the Dead Sea Scrolls. You find scrolls thousands of years later, and the writing is preserved because they in fact sealed them in pottery containers, right? That was the common storage method. The next pasuk, Vekach sefer hamakneh hachi hava ma'isa, and I will take the sefer, that is the book that is going to cause the transference. That was just practically telling the story of what actually happened. Again, not the halacha, but just that was how this transference of property was taking place. Now the pasuk, the next one that we had in Dvarim, al pi shnayim edim o al pi shlosha edim, that there's 2 witnesses and 3 witnesses. Well, you know what that pasuk is for? It's lahakish shlosha l'shnayim. This is the famous argument in Maseches Makos, right? What Maseches Makos? You sounded like it was familiar to you, Brian, about the Maseches Makos. You had, I guess I don't know whether you had kids who went to Teitz Chaim already, so you had to go through this. So the answer is there's this pasuk is to tell me that 2 witnesses and 3 witnesses. Lahakish shlosha l'shnayim. It's to tell me that 3 witnesses has the same halacha as 2 witnesses. How so? Beplugta de Rabbi Akiva v'Rabbanan. It's because there's an argument between Rabbi Akiva and the Rabbanan, and the argument is that if I've got 3 witnesses, let's say I've got 2 witnesses, then then I need to have, in order to make them zomim, I have to prove that both witnesses are invalid. But what happens if I have 3 witnesses? Do I prove it? I only prove 2 of them are invalid, and the third one I can't prove. So the answer is they're not edim zomim until I knock off all 3. Why? Because the pasuk says that 3 witnesses are just like 2. Just like when you have 2 witnesses, you have to knock them both off in order to make them zomim. So too, when you have 3 witnesses, they are become one group, and you have to knock off all 3 in order for them to be zomim.
Right. I don't remember. Wouldn't that invalidate a contract if you have only one aid at that point? You have one. You have one aid in.
Yeah, but there's a difference between invalidating a contract and making them zomim.
Right. No. 100%.
Right.
Yeah.
So, fine. So, because they're not going to get the punishment of hazama, they're not going to get the punishment of what they tried to scheme to do to somebody else.
Right.
Okay. So now all 3 of these psukim are not being used for what you just said they are being used for. So, Ella Mikushar Midrabanan. So really, this whole thing of this whole contract with the ties and everything, it's completely rabbinic. They made it up. The rabbis made it up. V'kroya smachta bi'alma. And these psukim, they were just reminders. You were just trying to find psukim in order to remind you of the concept of the idea. Now, everybody wanted to know, v'taima mai takinu rabbanan mekushar. Then why did the rabbanan make such a thing? Ready? Okay. Asr de kohani havu. There was a place that there were a lot of kohanim. Okay? And what everybody knows about kohanim is v'havu kapdi tuva. They get very easily upset. Okay? Kohanim.
We should keep away from this guy. Right?
That's correct. Explosive kohanim. And what would happen is umagarshi nashayu. They would divorce their wives. Now, there's a problem with kohanim divorcing their wives. Everybody who divorces their wife could remarry her, as long as she didn't get married in between, right? If a man divorces his wife and she marries somebody else, then he can't marry her again. But if a man divorces his wife and he decides tomorrow that was a bad move, they get married again and they just and then can happily have ever after, right?
Yeah.
But not a kohen. Once he divorces his wife, he can't marry a grusha, even his own grusha. Therefore, he can't remarry her. So therefore, this combination of hot-headed kohanim who would not be able to remarry their wives created problems. So what did they do? V'avli rabbanan takanta. They made an idea. This contract takes a good amount of time to write it, fold it, find an extra witness, to sew it together. So therefore, dahachi v'hachi, while they were doing all of that work, misva dasaihu, they would calm down. Okay? And then, right, I'm the only coin here, so I can tell you. Right? Could hear you. Right? They would calm down, that's it, right? Sleep on it.
So
right?
That's their fidget thing.
Because if it wasn't put on the wall, it's
What is
folded
it?
nicely in the
That's
corner.
right.
Yeah.
Pins and needles, needles and pins. It's the happy man that grins. What am I mad about? Right? See how to say that? Okay, now. So hatinach gitin. So fine. I understand divorce contracts. They made this in the divorce contracts. Shtaros ma'ikal meimar. Why is this the rule when it comes to sales of property then? What's the problem with sales of property? So the answer is, they didn't want to make a distinction between how you write what the rules of a get and the rules of a contract are. Why? Because it would fall out of practice. And then they wouldn't use it, and then a Kohen wouldn't use it, and then it wouldn't help. So therefore, they wanted to make sure that this became common practice, so they made this an acceptable for use of sales. Heichan Aiden Chosman. Where are the witnesses signing on this? So the Mishnah said we signed on the back, and I wrote it on the back over here. But it's a subject to machlokas. Rav Huna Omar, Bein Kesher LeKesher. We're going to sign it between the ties. I'm not exactly sure where that is. Actually, between the ties. If you take a look at where this is, that they're tying it over here between the folds, or on the fold, maybe it was, or something like that. I'm not exactly sure. But maybe it was. Maybe they're actually signing it on the fold, and however it is. Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba Amar Achorei Haksav, that you're signing on the back of the writing. Right? The writing is on this side, the witness is on this side. Okay, so that's what he holds. Oh, Kneged Haksav mi bechutz. Amar le Rami bar Chama Rav Chisda. Rami bar Chama said to Rav Chisda, Rav Huna, de Amar ben Kesher lekesher, kasal kodaitin ben Kesher lekesher migavai. He says, well, they weren't exactly sure where this signature was taking place either. When you say it was between the knots, they were presuming that what was happening is the witnesses were signing on the inside here, where they were going to sign, and then they were tying it up. So the signature was on the inside, right? But that's going to be problematic, because if that's the case, there was a circumstance, a story that happened. There was a get mekushar, and obviously these things were much less common. So one showed up in Rebbe's court, and Vama Rebbe, and Rebbe took a look at this thing. It was all signed up. It was all sealed up, and he said, "Ein zman bazeh." Where's the date on this contract? Looking at this thing, it's got no date on it. How is this a kosher contract without a date? Amar le Rabbi Shimon Rebbe, so Rabbi Shimon, the son of Rebbe, told Rebbe, right? He was like, Dad, right? You have to get with the times, the new technology that's out there. Shema bein ksharav muvla. Maybe you have to untie it, open it up, and then you can see where the date is. Okay? So Palyeh, B'chazye, so he did, he untied it, and he found, in fact, that it was fine, that they had the date written inside. Now, Vim Isa, if the signatures were on the inside of the signatures, if the signatures were on the inside of where they tied it up, so then Ein Zman Bazev, Ein Eda Bazemi Boile. Why didn't Rebbe exclaim, "What's wrong with this contract? There's no date, there's no witnesses"? Because the witnesses would have been covered up or signed in the knots also. So then clearly Rebbe should have complained that this contract has got no date and no witnesses. So Amar Le, Mi Savar Ben Kesher Le Kesher Mi Gavai. So he says, no. You don't understand the machlokas. You're right. That wasn't a question of that they were tying it inside. Everyone agrees it's between the knots on the back. Between the knots on the back. Lo Ben Kesher Le Kesher Me Abroi. It's on the back. V'nechosh dilma zayif. So now, next question. Why shouldn't we be concerned that the contract is a forgery? The cause of my deboy, maybe what he did was, he would write it, right? And now, he's going to write, because the witnesses are up here, and the contract continues down here. So fine. So why doesn't he just continue on and write some more stuff down here and more on, right? Except this contract is valid, except if it's a Tuesday, and in which case, and he can write more. So therefore, Kosevi my deboy, v'chasimi sahadi, and then you can say, okay, well, maybe he's got to fold over again. That's fine. He'll just forge the fourth signature. Why? Because in order to accept this contract, all he needs is to certify three of the witnesses. He's got a fourth witness. They say, why do you have the fourth witness? He says, because the fourth witness, I just wanted more witnesses in order to be able to make sure that everybody knew all about this contract. But all I need to do is, in order to prove it's valid, all I need is to prove three of them. Where you get the fourth witness can never be proven because it's a forgery, right? But the judge is going to know that. All he knows is this is a kosher contract. There are at least three witnesses written on it, and that which he wrote on the bottom, more stuff, he got another witness on it. So the answer is diksiv bei. The way that we know that the contract is over is that you write in a contract shrir v'kayim. Right? This is standing and established. When you see the word shrir v'kayim in a contract, that is the end of the contract. Nothing else should be written after that. V'nechosh dilma kosov my deboy v'hodar ksiv shrir v'kayim. Maybe he just continues writing and then he writes shrir v'kayim at the end of that. So the answer is v'kayim achri, just write it a second time. So the answer is chad shrir v'kayim kosvinon, trei shrir v'kayim lo kosvinon. No contract has it twice. So if you saw the word shrir v'kayim twice, you know that he added more stuff on. Shrir v'kayim is the end of the contract, but should only be in a contract one time. Maybe what the guy would do is he'll erase the first shrir v'kayim, right? So on parchment, he just takes a razor blade and scratches it off, and then he writes whatever he wants. The other shrir v'kayim, and now he's going to write shrir v'kayim again. So ha'amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan answers, Taluya mikuyemes keshera. He says that if you've got a contract, right, that is teluya, that is hanging, meaning it's got empty space, right? Then that is established, right? Then this contract is established, so then that is fine. However, machak, if you have an erased zone in the contract, that's puzzle. If you see a place that is erased in the contract, then you don't know what he erased. He might have erased the word shrir v'kayim and then put a whole section on the contract illegally. So therefore, that's not going to be allowed. Even if the contract has been validated by a Beis Din, it's no good. Why not? Because it might have been validated by the Beis Din and then he changed the text. So we can't. Once you see an erasure, then that's no good. Now, the only time an erasure is no good is if the words shrir v'kayim are if you would read it and then you see an erasure where somebody could have written shrir v'kayim. In other words, he says, and this is the and he loaned me the money, and this deal is, and then there's an erasure. Only acceptable on Tuesday, right? No, that space that he could have read, this deal is established and finalized. Well, once that's what's erased, then you have to worry about it. If it was like it's 150 and then something's erased and it says $1,000 or something, then that wouldn't be a problem. It's only if the word shrir v'kayim could be erased. Because shrir v'kayim, and the amount of the erasure has to be large enough that he could have written the word shrir v'kayim. Okay? So that's where we're going to stop. In other words, the point is that by the words shrir v'kayim, that's the end of the contract. And that's how we know that we weren't going to add on anything. We're on Kuf Samach Aleph on the top. Today's daf is Kuf Samach Aleph. So we are on target.